So Antonoaldo, it's a very strong set of results, but you're not the first UAE airline to come out with strong results for 2023. To what extent is this a rising tide lifting all boats, and to what extent is it stuff that you've done internally?
It's a fair point. It's a very, very good point. I mean, most of the airlines in the world are making money, right? It's a good time for airlines. I mean, you have on one hand, main economies growing, so GDP growing. So I don't think it's more COVID related, right? I mean, GDP is growing, right? And on the other hand, I mean, we're constrained because we don't have planes, right? So supply and demand is clearly not balanced. We're operating right now on load factors. I mean, we did 85% last year. I mean, in March right now, year to date, 92%. It's crazy. I've never seen that before, right? So, but we're doing better than competition on loads. So I would say it's a combination of both, right? So on one hand, I mean, the supply and demand is working well for everyone. On the other hand, I think Etihad is improving a lot. So, I mean, the fact that I have better load factors today than my competition, it speaks for itself, right? The fact that we're growing a lot and in a very quick pace, right? The fact that we're cutting costs, right? I mean, this is not the market. You said, I mean, our unit cost is going down by 7%. So I think there is also credit that is deemed to our people and to our workers.
Yeah, you deserve credit. When profit goes up, you deserve the credit. But if we break down that increase in passenger numbers, interesting to know who's flying. A lot of the noise we're getting out of particularly North America and Europe is that high-end business passengers, maybe not quite back to pre-pandemic levels, but this new affluent consumer, passengers who want to fly close to the pilot, is actually quite an important driver of those high-yielding seats. You seeing any of that here?
Yeah, it's happening. It's business class load factor last year was 80%. Corporate customers are not back to the level they were in 2019. So we're precisely correct. I mean, we see that, we feel that, we touch that every day, right? So it's a good market. I mean, it's and the region is doing very well. If you think about the region, right? I mean, it's not the same across the globe, right? You have some yield pressure in the US right now. You have a lot of inflation in Europe. I mean, we are in a very unique position. I mean, within 5 hours flight, 2.4 billion people and growing. I mean, I've been here for 1.5 years now. Abu Dhabi today is totally different than Abu Dhabi 1.5 years ago, right? I mean, you can see that.
So in terms of the profitability, 500 million-ish dirhams on 20 billion-ish dirhams of revenue, that's a margin of 2 and a bit% by my basic maths, which is good. I mean, is Etihad still in a turnaround situation, or have we exited that now?
I don't like to use the word turnaround because it looks like the job is done. You see what I mean? And this is my third airline. I was the CEO of an airline in South America, right? Where you have a crisis every other year, right? And we think you're done, you're not done, right? I was the CEO of a legacy carrier in Europe, right? Very hard to make change, right? I mean, airline is a difficult business. It's not an easy business, not for the faint of heart, right? So, I mean, the day you think the turnaround is done, I mean, competition kills you, right? So, I mean, we need to keep our eyes open. I agree with you, it's a good result. It's not an extraordinary result, right? Even though, I mean, we did an extraordinary job this year, right? Because the base was very low, right? So the improvement in margin was spectacular, right? There's still more to do. So I do believe that doing a little bit every year on a very fast pace is going to put us among the best and the most profitable airlines in the world in the future. But it will take more time, right? And when we get there, we'll have to do it more and more and more and more because it's airlines, right? You can never rest.
So there is some scrutiny on these numbers now. There's journalists like me, there's your board of directors, but you can fit them in a room. What if you became a listed company? You will be aware of the Bloomberg story that came out over the past few days about a potential IPO for Etihad. I'm sure you've been asked the question many times. I'm going to ask it as well. What can you tell us?
So, I mean, I've done it before, right? I listed Azul. Azul was listed in the New York Stock Exchange, an amazing success it was, 2017. I've done many M&A transactions in my career. The thing IPOs are always fascinating, right? People love to talk about it. But if you go one level below, right, and the surface, it's not a destination. I mean, it's not a place where we get to. It's just a start, right? I mean, it's not even a start. IPO is just another tool to have access to the capital markets. Have access to debt, have access to leasings, right? Operational leasings. You have access to shareholders, right? That we have today. So the way we see that we management, right, is I need to be ready so that whenever the shareholder decides is a good time to do it, we do it. And it's very easy, right? When the shareholder decides to do it, they file for that, and it becomes public. And in any IPO, right, you're going to know 1 month in advance when it becomes public, right? So we're not at that stage now, right? The shareholder has not filed. But we have the obligation as management, right, to improve governance, to improve the balance sheet, to improve the P&L of the company, to have a strategy for the long term, so that when the day comes, we do it. Azul took me 4 times. I only did at the 4th time, because it doesn't depend only on our will. You need to have a market that is vibrant. You need to have investors that are willing to invest. You need to have an equity story so that investors, they buy the equity story. And you need to have a company that is functioning well. I think we're working hard to check all these boxes, right? But you only know it when you do it. So as of now, I mean, it's still in the speculation phase, right? I mean, and it's rewarding for me and for my people that years ago in the news, right, the speculation was Etihad is going to be sold to a competitor, right? Etihad is going to go out of business, right? So it's really flattering to see that the speculation now is about an IPO, because that shows that these numbers that we're publishing, right, they have some reasoning, they are sound, and they provide us with a basis for the future. If we're going to do it or not, time will tell.
Let's talk about getting planes. It seems you have very little difficulty selling tickets and winning passengers, but what about aircraft? For people watching on TV, behind us now, there's a model of an Etihad aircraft.
It's not a real plane.
It's not a real plane, but you can buy models, but you can't buy planes at the moment. It's very, very hard. How do you characterize the challenges, particularly with Boeing, but not just Boeing?
Actually, you can buy planes, but they don't deliver, right? They're selling a lot. They keep selling. It's a big challenge. It's a serious problem. I think first and foremost is a problem for the industry, right? Because we're missing opportunities as an industry. I mean, we could be growing much more. We could be promoting development in many regions. We all know, right, how aviation is connected to development, right? And it's a shame. Honestly, it's a shame. I could have 5 more wide bodies today. I could have 5 more narrow bodies today. I'm sourcing narrow bodies now in the secondary market. So we sourced it in November last year when we were lucky. We're lucky and we were very agile. We sourced 6 almost brand new 321 neos that were flying with Bamboo in Vietnam. And they're going to be flying starting May. Thanks God we got those planes. Because, I mean, the manufacturers just don't deliver, right? And this is a big global problem. And it's not only Boeing, it's Boeing and Airbus. It's the entire industry, right? And I think, I mean, the manufacturers have to reconsider the way they're managing that, because they keep selling, and they don't deliver. It's a shame, right? And in the end, I mean, the industry could be much better, much stronger if planes were arriving, right? So it's frustrating.
What about non-Airbus and Boeing? Singapore Air Show, all the noise was about Comac, the Chinese narrow-bodied aircraft. Embraer, of course, out of South America, your part of the world. They make aeroplanes.
They do, and I mean, I'm very familiar with ATRs. I had the largest fleet of ATR in the world. It's an amazing plane. I had one of the largest fleets of, actually it was the largest fleet of Embraer 190s in the world. I had more than 90 of those planes in Brazil. Great planes. The 220 is a great plane, right? It was Bombardier before. I mean, I don't know about the Comac. Not that I don't know, that I'm questioning, but I have never invested time trying to understand the plane. So it's a brand new plane, so I cannot comment on that with experience. But you're right. I mean, the world has other manufacturers. The only issue is that the segment those manufacturers they play, they don't match with our network. I mean, I would love to have other alternatives, right? But reality is the 190s or the 220s are too small for Etihad. In 4 hours, we have 2.4 billion people here, right? I need planes that can carry about 190, 200 passengers. I need some business class seats. So maybe for other markets, right, they're going to play a role, right? So if you go to Indigo, right, they have ATRs and they do well with ATRs. But in our case, unfortunately, we given our geographic position, it's not unfortunately, right? It's just a condition. We don't have the chance, but maybe one day these other manufacturers are gonna build great narrow bodies and great wide bodies, and then competition is gonna happen to help the sector.
Who knows? Maybe your friends up the road in LA will build one as well and surprise us all.
Who knows, right?
Maybe in our lifetime. Some of the challenges that you may face more long term. I was chatting with one aviation consultant this morning, Vinamra Longani, great guy, know him well. One of his 3 mega trends for the industry going forward is people don't want to connect. They want to go point to point. Etihad and the other Gulf carriers, connection is in your DNA. It's the lion's share of what you do. What happens when Air India under Tata has a really good service going direct from Mumbai to London and so on?
I think it's not either. It's not either or. You see what I mean? It's not point to point or connections. I've experienced in the Brazilian market, right? Azul, when Azul was founded, Azul was a point-to-point carrier, evolved to a network carrier, right? And is investing again in point-to-point. I believe demand is foster in aviation, right? I mean, every time we start connecting, you promote aviation, and then point-to-point comes. So let's look at Dubai. What happened in Dubai? In the past, was primarily a connecting market. Now there's a lot of point-to-point in Dubai. I was shocked, right, with the numbers. UAE today is bigger than Brazil in terms of passengers per year. Few people are talking about that. Isn't that mind-blowing? Brazil has 220 million people, 100 million passengers per year. We have more in the UAE than in Brazil. So is it a mega hub? Of course it is. But look how big is the local demand in Dubai. So my view is that these things, they come hand in hand. Why? Because it's the nature of competition, right? Of course, Air India is going to do a non-stop, and they should. But you know what? Connecting is going to be cheaper. But you know what? Connecting, people that are in India can clear immigration in Abu Dhabi. And there are people that value that. You see what I mean? So it's always like that, right? The connecting flights are cheaper. If you go and see the US market, right? The US market over the past 10, 15 years, even Southwest is connecting people. There's only two pure point-to-point players today in the market, right? Swiss Air in Europe and Ryanair in Europe, right? Lufthansa is a huge network carrier. So I don't think it's one or the other, right? I think both models are going to evolve. And in some phases, Etihad is going to be doing more point-to-point. In other phases, Etihad is going to be doing more. It depends on how the network evolves. It's not a static. So we just announced Jaipur in India, right? So we're building that market, right? One day, if we build that market in a way that is so big, someone's going to put a non-stop from Jaipur to somewhere. You see what I mean? And that's the nature, right? That's the nature. And so I do believe it's going to evolve hand in hand. Sometimes the emphasis is going to be more on point-to-point. Sometimes in the network, it depends on competition. So I'm honestly not worried about that tension right now because I think it's part of the business.
Just quickly before we wrap up, comments from yourself, but also your chairman in the release today. He says, our vision is to be the airline that everyone wants to fly. Well, which chairman wouldn't say that? But what does that look like? You say you want it to be an extraordinary experience. That costs money. I want a bowling alley and a gym in my economy class.
But this statement that our chairman is putting on the press release is so simple and at the same time is so deep. Right? Let me elaborate on that. It's not like any other comment. I mean, this is enrooted in our mission, right? And I really mean that. And let me explain you. This is behind our strategy, right? I mean, we don't have the scale of other airlines, right? I don't, period, right? So I cannot afford to lose one customer. And I have to face reality. I compete in Rome, flying to Rome with low cost. So Etihad today, round trip to Rome is $375. Go Google it, right? And why is that? Because I have competition. So the way we view our strategy is the following. We have to have a great customer experience. We have to have the lowest possible cost we can have at a very high quality service, right? We have to have a good network so that we provide a good network for our customers. But I need to be able to segment the play. I have to have a value proposition that my guy that is willing to go in the front, right, in a first class seat, is going to have the best service one can have in the airline industry in those 2-4 rows that I have with first class. I have to have a business class that is amazing, beautiful, neat, that speaks to that customer as you just described it, right? But you know what? The last 4 rows, I need to be able to fight the low-cost competition. So why can't I segment my plane in a way that I have a different offer and that I can become the choice of each and every customer that is willing to fly from point A to point B?
So you could get rid of things like free F&B?
I mean, that we have a hard time doing that, right? Free F&B, but we could be in a situation, we are today, right? In which if you fly in the back, you get less, right? If you buy extra legroom, you get more, right? We've tried that, we experimented that in TAP Air Portugal very successfully. So TAP Air Portugal had the same dilemma, right? I mean, you have to speak to the affluent class in Brazil, in Europe, but at the same time, you have the student, right, that is paying $50 a ticket, right, to fly 2 hours. How do you manage that? And we did that very successfully in TAP, and I think we can replicate that here. We can't forget, there's a lot of growth in this region that is coming also from the middle class. So we have to speak to those people.
Last question, 2030, big focus for you since you've been here 18 months. Well, it's half a decade away now. What's Etihad going to look like in numbers? Number of planes, number of passengers, revenue, pick a number.
So we believe we can do about 30 to 33 million passengers in 2030. So this is 3 times bigger than we did just in 2022, right? So we're going to triple the number of customers. The fleet is going to be twice as big. So it's a little bit counterintuitive, right? But it's going to be twice as big, but the utilization is going to be higher. So instead of using 8 hours per day at 320, I'm going to be using 12, 13 hours per day at 320, right? So double the size of the fleet, triple the number of passengers.
Best of luck with that. I appreciate your time. Congratulations on these results.
Thank you so much.